Hey everyone, did you know that over 90% of you watching right now haven't hit that subscribe button? If you enjoy our content, take a second to subscribe. It's free and it really helps us keep bringing you great stories every day. I remember the way her hands trembled the first time she told me her dream. We were sitting on the floor of our tiny apartment, knees brushing, surrounded by textbooks and empty ramen cups. Evelyn had just come home from her shift at the diner, her fingers sore from holding too many trays, and I had just finished a double on the construction site. She looked at me with those brown eyes, soft like warm soil, and whispered, I want to help people feel safe again, in their bodies. I want to become a massage therapist. There was no money, no time, no room for error. But there was trust. So I nodded. Then that's what we'll do. The next 7 years were a blur of long hours, side jobs, missed birthdays, and two people pulling the same weight even when it got heavier than it should have. I worked night shifts, took overtime, fixed her car with borrowed tools, designed the logo for her practice with an old laptop that overheated every 10 minutes. She studied in the back room of the deli I cleaned, practiced on my shoulders, made flashcards out of our grocery lists. When she passed her exam, I cried harder than she did. Her first client came in through a referral from one of my coworkers. Then the word spread. She was good, more than good. She had a gift. Her touch made people feel seen, not just healed. Within a year, we were looking at rental spaces. I poured my savings, our savings, into a small corner unit with pale green walls and a leaky faucet. I fixed that faucet myself, painted the walls, laid down the floors, built her reception desk with my own hands. She'd bring coffee, kiss the back of my neck, and say, I couldn't do any of this without you. For a while, I believed her. Success came fast once the right people found her. A feature in a lifestyle magazine, social media buzz, clients with last names that had their own wings in hospitals. She started being invited to networking events, retreats, collaborations. Her phone never stopped buzzing, her clothes changed, her laugh changed, she changed. It didn't happen all at once. First it was missed dinners, then unanswered texts. She started spending weekends with her business mentor, a woman named Lorraine whose voice sounded like sugar-coated commands. Evelyn started saying things like, you wouldn't understand, and you should be proud of me, in a tone that didn't leave space for pride, only distance. At night, I'd still make tea and leave her cup on the counter. Most mornings, it was still there, cold and untouched. One time I found a new scent on her scarf, not perfume, expensive cologne. It wasn't mine. I didn't ask. I didn't want to know. Not because I was afraid of the truth, but because deep down, I already knew. I told myself it was the stress, the pressure of growing a business, that we'd reconnect when things settled, but they never did. Her family had never liked me. Too blue-collar, too quiet, too unimpressed by money. I sat through years of backhanded compliments and fake smiles, telling myself it didn't matter because Evelyn saw me, because she chose me. But I was beginning to wonder if she still did. Our 7th anniversary arrived with no fanfare. I reminded her 3 days before. She said she had something special planned. I believed her, like a fool. She told me to wear something nice, said it was a formal dinner with family and some new partners in the business. I wore the only suit I owned, pressed it myself, bought a new tie. She didn't ride with me, said she was meeting them early. The restaurant was upscale, crystal chandeliers, sleek black furniture, a pianist in the corner playing songs I couldn't name. I felt like a misplaced jigsaw piece from the moment I walked in. Her father barely acknowledged me. Her mother gave me a kiss on the cheek that felt like a warning. Evelyn looked stunning, polished, cold. Her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. The dinner was filled with laughter I didn't recognize, conversations I wasn't included in. Every time I tried to speak, someone would talk over me. Her cousin made a joke about men who ride on their wives' coattails. Her mother chimed in with a story about how Evelyn had built her empire from scratch. I felt the blood drain from my face, but I said nothing. Just reached for my water, trying to steady my hands. Then Evelyn stood up. She raised her glass and called for silence. Her voice was smooth, confident. I just want to thank everyone who's supported me on this incredible journey, she said, especially my family. You've believed in me since the beginning. A pause, then she turned to me. And Ezra, she added with a polite smile. Thank you for holding things down when I was starting out. You've been dependable. Dependable. The word hit harder than any insult. There was a smattering of applause. Someone clinked a fork against a wine glass. I felt like I was standing in the middle of a room that was crumbling in slow motion. Every smile aimed at me was a knife. Every glance was a confirmation. I didn't belong here anymore. I didn't say a word. I stood up, adjusted my jacket, and walked out. No one stopped me. Outside, the night was heavy with the kind of silence that follows a storm. I sat in my truck for a long time, staring at the wheel. The woman I'd built a life with, sacrificed for, loved without condition, had made it clear. I was no longer a part of her story. I was a footnote, an afterthought. I drove home slowly. The house was dark. The tea I'd made that morning was still on the counter, untouched. I didn't cry. Not yet. The next day, I sat at the kitchen table and pulled out the file folder I kept in the bottom drawer of the desk. It was thick. Contracts, receipts, deeds. The business was registered in both our names. The lease was under my credit. The capital that started it all, from my account. I had signed every loan, paid every invoice. Not because I wanted ownership, but because she had needed me. I flipped through the pages in silence, each document more damning than the last. Not to her, to the story I had told myself, to the belief that love was immune to power, to ambition. It wasn't revenge I felt, not anger. Just a quiet sense of balance tipping back toward center. I closed the folder and stared out the window. There are moments in life when words lose their meaning, when even rage feels small. This was one of them. And still I didn't cry. Not because it didn't hurt, but because something deeper had settled in. A kind of clarity, a kind of peace. Something was ending, but something else was about to begin. The next morning I woke up before the sun. Old habits? The house was quiet, the kind of stillness that echoes. I moved through the rooms slowly, like I was walking through someone else's life. Her shoes by the door. The scarf with someone else's cologne still hanging on the coat rack. Our wedding photo on the shelf, gathering dust. It didn't feel like grief anymore, just release. I brewed coffee, black, the way I always had. Sat at the table with the folder again. I read every line of every document just to be sure. It wasn't about punishment. It was about truth. About finally seeing what had been in front of me all along. When Evelyn came home hours later, she didn't say anything at first. Just walked past me, heels clicking like punctuation marks. Her phone was in her hand. Her smile wasn't. I didn't look up. You left the dinner, she said finally, as if it had been a business meeting I'd walked out of, not our anniversary. I did. She waited. When I didn't elaborate, she let out a quiet scoff. You embarrassed me. I looked up at her then. Not with anger, just tired honesty. You embarrassed yourself, I said. She blinked, the smallest flinch in her jaw. But then the walls went back up. You don't understand what I've built, she said. What this takes. I do, I said. I was there, remember? Something passed between us then. A flicker of the woman I used to know. But it was gone before it settled. This isn't working anymore, Ezra, she said, voice calm, rehearsed. We're just different now. I nodded. We are. She looked relieved, maybe expecting a fight I didn't have in me. She turned, already opening her phone again. I'll have Lorraine contact you about the paperwork. I think it's best if we keep things professional. I didn't correct her, not yet. She paused. You'll land on your feet, she added, as if she was giving me a parting gift. Then she left, just like that. And I let her. I spent the next week cleaning, not out of sadness, but clarity. Every drawer, every corner of the house. I gave away what I didn't need, packed the rest. I worked in silence. No music, no distractions. Just my thoughts and the sound of the wind outside. There's a strange peace in solitude when you're finally honest with yourself. I contacted a lawyer, not a flashy one. Just a smart, steady woman who asked the right questions and didn't blink when I told her what I wanted. I didn't want money, not revenge. I wanted truth, recognized and upheld. The business was legally mine as much as it was hers, in some places more so. My name was on the lease, the original account, the registration. I had receipts for the funding, proof of the hours, the investments, not because I had prepared for this, just because I had done the work. Every brick in that building had my fingerprints on it, not just financially, but spiritually. I had believed in her when no one else had. I had carried her dream like it was my own. So when the papers were drawn, I signed them with steady hands. 2 weeks later, I walked into the studio unannounced. Lorraine was in the lobby, her voice like syrup over ice, sweet and sharp. She looked surprised to see me until she saw the documents in my hand. Then she went quiet. I didn't cause a scene, just walked through the space like someone returning home. The staff recognized me. Some looked away, some nodded with quiet understanding. No one stopped me. In Evelyn's office, the light was soft. Her chair was turned toward the window. She didn't hear me at first. When she did, she stood up fast. "What are you doing here?" I placed the folder on her desk. "It's done," I said. "The transfer, the ownership claim, everything." She opened the folder, skimmed the first few pages, her face paled. "This is a mistake," she said. "You wouldn't—" I did. Her hands shook slightly. "Why?" I met her eyes. "Because I'm done carrying things for people who pretend I was never there." She stepped forward. "You wouldn't really shut it down. This is my life, my career." "No," I said softly. "It was our life. And you decided to walk away from that." She didn't respond, just stared, as if seeing me clearly for the first time in years. I turned to leave. "You're ruining everything," she said, voice barely above a whisper. "No," I replied. "I'm reclaiming it." And then I walked out. No shouting, no threats, just the sound of a door closing behind me. Later that day, the studio was locked. The website went dark. Bookings were canceled. The business, for all its shine and polish, had always rested on the quiet strength behind it. Without that, it folded like paper. She tried to fight it at first, called, left messages, sent Lorraine. But there was nothing to argue. The facts were solid, the documents clear. I never raised my voice, never answered anger with anger. I didn't need to. Truth doesn't shout, it stands. A few people reached out, former clients, mutual friends. Some were surprised, some weren't. A few apologized. Most didn't know what to say. I didn't blame them. I moved into a small place on the edge of town. Nothing fancy, just enough. I planted a garden, started fixing things again, this time for myself. The days were quiet, honest. I found work that let me use my hands, built furniture, repaired fences, helped neighbors without needing to be seen. There was a kind of healing in the simplicity, in knowing that my worth didn't depend on anyone else's approval. Evelyn tried to rebuild, started a new brand. But something was missing. Maybe it was trust. Maybe it was heart. Maybe it was the one person who had believed in her when she had nothing. I didn't watch closely. I wasn't interested in her fall. That wasn't my story anymore. Mine was about letting go without bitterness. About finding peace not through revenge, but truth. I didn't win anything, but I didn't lose myself. And maybe that's the quietest kind of justice. The seasons changed without fanfare. Leaves turned gold and then brown. The wind carried a kind of hush with it that I didn't mind. I found rhythm in the stillness. Days came and went like steady footsteps, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was walking in my own direction, not behind someone else's. The garden grew slowly at first, like it was learning to trust me. The soil was rocky, stubborn, but I worked with it. I turned the dirt by hand, carried water in old buckets, whispered quiet encouragement to the green shoots breaking through. Some mornings I'd sit on the porch with my coffee and just watch things grow. No expectations, no timelines, just life unfolding. People started to call me for small repairs. Word spread, quietly the way things used to. I fixed broken fences, patched roofs, built shelves. They paid me in pies, old tools, or quiet thank yous that meant more than money ever had. One woman handed me a note with a pressed flower tucked inside. It simply read, "Thank you for seeing the cracks and choosing to mend them." Sometimes when the work was done, I'd just sit with folks, listen to their stories, their losses, their laughter, their quiet regrets. You'd be surprised what people are willing to share when you don't rush them. I didn't talk much about Evelyn, not because I was hiding anything, but because the story no longer needed retelling. It had played out the way it was always going to. There's a peace in not needing to be right, in knowing you did what you could, that you showed up, that you gave love without a ledger. One afternoon, about 6 months after I left the studio behind, I got a letter in the mail. Handwritten, the envelope neat and clean. No return address. It was from her. Evelyn's handwriting hadn't changed. Still elegant, still precise. But the words were heavier this time, like they carried weight she'd never admitted aloud. She didn't ask for anything. Not forgiveness, not a second chance. Just acknowledgement. She wrote that she never realized how much I had done, how much of her success had been rooted in my sacrifice. She admitted that she let the noise of praise drown out the voice of the one person who had believed in her first. She said she thought she was outgrowing me, but now saw that she had just lost sight of what growth truly was. She ended the letter with one line. I was looking for wings and never realized I already had a home. I read it once, then again, and then I folded it and placed it in the drawer beneath the sink. Not out of spite, just closure. Sometimes people don't know what they're losing until the silence speaks louder than anything else. I never wrote back, because some stories don't need to be reopened. They just need to be honored for what they were and released for what they'll never be again. A few months later, I got a call from an old friend of mine, Marty, who ran a small workshop on the edge of town. He was retiring. Said he wanted to leave the place to someone who actually cared about people more than profit. I took over the space, cleaned it up, repaired the tools, started offering workshops. Not just to fix things, but to teach. Kids, teens, older folks trying something new. It became a place where people came not just to build shelves or birdhouses, but to rebuild themselves. One evening, a teenage boy showed up. Awkward, quiet. His hoodie was too big for him, sleeves covering his hands. He just stood in the doorway, not saying much. I nodded to a stool beside me. You know how to use a chisel? He shook his head. Then today's a good day to start. He came back the next day and the next. After a few weeks, he smiled for the first time. Sometimes justice isn't loud. It's not about grand gestures or public reckoning. Sometimes it's a quiet seed that grows into something better than you ever expected. I built a life that wasn't flashy. No billboards, no features in magazines. But it was mine. Honest. Rooted. People came and went. Some stayed, some just passed through. But every person that crossed the threshold brought something, a story, a laugh, a lesson. And I gave them what I had: time, hands, listening, space. Years passed. One fall afternoon, I was at the workbench smoothing the edges of a cedar plank when a car pulled into the gravel drive. It was newer, sleek, out of place. Evelyn stepped out. I hadn't seen her in a long time, but she looked softer. Not in a weak way, just less guarded. She didn't walk with that same performative grace. She just walked, like someone who had finally stopped running. I met her at the porch. We stood there for a moment, neither of us speaking. I heard about this place, she said eventually. Didn't know it was yours. It is, I said. She nodded, looked around. It's beautiful. Thanks. There was a pause. I'm not here to stir anything up, she said quickly. I needed to see it for myself. I nodded. That's fair. She looked at the open door behind me, saw the shelves, the tools, the wall with thank you notes and kid drawings. You're still building things, she said. I smiled gently. Only what lasts. She looked down. I'm sorry. I know. A breeze passed between us. Leaves rustled. I hope you're happy, she said. I am. She swallowed. That's good. I didn't ask about her life, her career, her family. Some questions don't need answers. She reached into her coat and handed me a small box. This was yours, she said. From the old office. I opened it later. Inside was the original logo I'd sketched for her business. my handwriting still scratched on the back of the paper. She had kept it all this time. I closed the lid gently, placed it on the shelf. She left without asking for anything more, and that was the end of it. Some stories don't need dramatic finales, just a quiet exit and a door gently closing behind you. Now, when people ask me what I do, I just say, I help things grow. And I do. Not for applause, not for approval, just because it feels right. The hands that once held dreams for someone else now build hope in the simplest places. A crooked fence, a garden bed, a boy learning to carve, a man who finally remembered his own worth. Sometimes the best kind of justice isn't about proving them wrong. It's about proving to yourself that you were never small to begin with. Just quiet. And that's more than enough.